Hello, and thank you for joining us here for another episode of our Cheyenne and Arapaho Productions podcast. I'm Darren Brown, and today I've got folks from the George Hawkins Memorial Treatment Center in Clinton, Oklahoma, or as we say out here in Clinton. Hey, I'm glad you all are with us today. So I'm going to start with you, and we'll just go right down the line here, and you all introduce yourselves.
Okay, my name is Angie Littlecalf. I'm one of the substance abuse counselors at George Hawkins Treatment Center. I'm a Cheyenne and Arapaho tribal member, and I've been with the treatment center 2 years now.
Winnie Whitetail. I'm the director of George Hawkins Memorial Treatment Center, going on my 5th year at George Hawkins, and I love my job.
I'm Kenny Williams, and I'm a Cheyenne and Arapaho tribal member. I'm the peer recovery support specialist at the treatment center. I've been with the program for 3 years, and I think about 3 months since I've been working there.
I'm Jodi Linder. I'm the outpatient counselor at George Hawkins. I'm the newest person on this team here right now.
Somebody has to be the rookie.
Yes, somebody does. So I started back in May of last year, and I absolutely love working at George Hawkins.
And I'm Eilleen McGee. I'm the lead counselor at George Hawkins, working in my 7th year. I'm LPC and LADC. I hold two licenses. Been in this field an awfully long time.
Mm-hmm. Well, Winnie, you're the director, so I'm going to let you jump in and give us kind of a brief history of the George Hawkins Treatment Center and kind of what your mission is. And I say brief, but yeah, just kind of an overview of the services you folks provide.
The knowledge that I'm aware of is that the treatment center started in the early 70s, and it started out, I understand, from a trailer in Bessie, Oklahoma, and then it moved to Concho.
A trailer, huh? Humble beginning, right?
And then from Concho, it moved to Clinton. We've been in our Clinton facility 20 plus years. When I came on as director, we were still in the midst of renovation. So, and this is like during the pandemic.
Okay.
So, that's the history that I know of George Hawkins.
And what services does the center provide?
Well, our mission is to provide a residential treatment center for our Native people that are struggling with addiction. And that could be any drug, could be alcohol. We're soon going to be adding gambling counseling. We added outpatient services, and it's to help our people find a place where they can come and heal. I always feel like we tell our people we're going to help you find your emotional spirit. And that's what we do for 90 days. We've done a couple of modifications to the scope of work with IHS, and one of them was to go from 60 days to 90 days residential treatment. And
Closed door cycle?
We have a closed door cycle, which means we open up applications, we do a pre-assessment, whoever we accept, then we close the door. It's not the rotation in and out, in and out.
Oh, that was actually, that's was one of my questions, and I think it makes sense to me.
Well, it gives them a chance to support one another, bond with each other, and it gives them a family. So when they leave, they call each other, they stay in touch, and they call us back, and they'll let you know how everyone's doing.
Well, yeah, you guys, people that you have, it's accountability is so much a part of. Wouldn't it be a great world if we all were accountable, accountable to someone else?
Really.
Okay. I think one of the things as you were speaking, I thought, do you have any numbers and I'm just asking, you may not have this, but as to how many people have been treated there just in let's say the last 10 years or so? Or?
Not in the last 10 years, but I do have numbers since I've been there.
Okay.
We just completed our 12th 90-day cycle, and we keep outcomes. We keep data.
Mm-hmm.
So we keep behavioral outcomes as well. So I'm just going to give you a snippet of what we look at is we give preference to our Cheyenne and Arapaho people. And out of these 12 cycles, we have a breakdown of tribal members that come in. I'm looking for my.
Well, let me ask you this: I know that obviously more than just Cheyenne and Arapaho tribal members are probably come and apply. What is
Oh,
the criteria to be accepted?
You have to be an enrolled tribal member of any federally recognized tribe.
Okay.
We do give our people preference. They come in, we screen them, we assess them, and we give them a date to show up. This last graduation, we had 100% Cheyenne Arapaho tribal members.
No kidding.
And so my goal is to service our people. And then we allow other people, other tribes to come in. But when we're looking at data, more men come in than females because women have children. And it's hard for them to get away for 90 days. We've serviced about 80 of our tribal members and about 179 total of the 12 cycles. So what I'd like to do is have Kenny and Angie talk a little bit about well-briety, because that really puts the spiritual and cultural focus on our treatment.
Makes sense, sure.
Okay. So I co-facilitate well-briety with Kenny Williams. We both went to training for the 12 Steps program. And then we've also done, as a whole team, Winnie had us all go for a Mending Broken Hearts training. And then we also have an upcoming training that we're going to attend, which is called Warrior Down. And through these trainings, we learn about intergenerational trauma. We learn about boarding school trauma. We learn that it's not what's wrong with you, it's what happened to you. Mm-hmm. We teach, it's about 12 chapters through a well-briety Red Road facility. Sorry.
Yeah.
But Kenny, do you want to?
I was going to jump in
No,
for
go
a
ahead.
second. Well, I know when you talk about intergenerational trauma, and that's something, I think that's really hard for people who, I'll just make an assumption here. I think for people who are not native, who don't hear that, people who don't know that, who don't hear that very often, they really don't know what it is, and therefore they do not understand it. Mm-hmm. Could you all talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah. What it is because
it's a hard. It's not just that's it. It's not an easy subject to understand, really.
Yeah. Well-briety is just a lot of our native people, this Alcoholics Anonymous that they do have. What is well-briety? What it stands for? It's the Indian. It's their way of saying sobriety. It's just want you to be well, and then a part of it is being sober. So well-briety, what it does is teach a lot of our native people to going back to their culture, to help them with their sobriety. I know myself, that's what I do with my sobriety. Picking our ways back up, going to sweats and going back around our ceremonies, and a lot of it is just the 12 steps. It's just to give them a better understanding of the steps when they start working those steps. And as well-briety, it goes with seasons. It's like when they start out, they go. When they start out, it's like a spring season that they're in. And then that's when they start moving forward with their sobriety. And as it goes, and it coincides with our ceremonies and how we do things, in the circle, how everything is when we're infant, when we start out, then youth and adult, then elder. And a lot of that is just, helping them to understand their culture, going back to their culture and picking it back up, like I say. And it's just to bring that balance back into their life.
Yeah, thank you for saying that. Yeah. That word is, it's at the root of everything. If we're not in balance, there's all sorts of things that can go wrong.
Yeah, and it, like I said, myself, I'm in recovery too, and going back to our culture, and just like I said, picking it up, and that's what has helped me with our sobriety. But I do know that we're all different in our recovery. Whatever works for somebody, what works for me might not work for somebody else.
Yeah, we all learn differently, and we all react differently to things.
Yeah. So, and a lot of that, in what we do over there, we do the sweats too. We do them every 2 weeks over there. And a lot of that, we encourage them to participate in the sweat. The thing is just that, myself, when I first came, I went to the same treatment center that I work at now. When I went in there, I went in there with an open mind. I wanted to find what was going to help me to stay sober. And that's what I found in our ways, going back to our sweats and our ceremonies.
When we do a pre-assessment of the clients, we have them rate themselves when they come in, and there's 5 domains that we have them score themselves on this staging tool. And one is their alcohol and substance dependence, their physical, where they're at physically when they come in, their emotional, their cultural and social, and their spiritual. So they rate themselves and they come in and they might be a 2.0, which is residential treatment. And then they may move to 5.0, which is halfway house or sober living. And then at the end, they score 7. They see their progress on paper and they're like, they've improved that much. And it's outpatient aftercare.
I think we all need a sheet like that to look at every day and see where you are. Because I'm just saying, some days I may be an 8 here, but maybe a 1.5 here.
Yeah.
And I think that's if we all probably need to assess ourselves and and pray, get prayed up for the areas we're deficient. Somebody say, amen.
I'd like to say it as we take our clinical piece and our cultural piece and we merge them together, because we have to have the cultural piece for Indian Health Service. And we have made big changes at George Hawkins, and we've been able to see the clinical outcomes as well as the cultural outcomes. They come in and they may not know anything about being Cheyenne or Arapaho, but when they leave, they're proud of who they are. So it makes an impact on their lives. As we get into talking about new services, which is outpatient, Jodi, can you tell us about outpatient?
Well, we started the outpatient program last August. That's when I first started seeing clients on an outpatient basis.
And real quickly, just like I said, I think people probably know what that means, but it does. Outpatient means you're coming in and you're not
right.
spending
You don't
the night
have to
there.
stay there. Exactly. Yeah. You come in, you do your appointment, and you go. So they're usually hour-long appointments, and people call in for various reasons. Lots of times the legal system is making them do some kind of counseling. So they come in, I might assess them to kind of see where they're at, and then, work with them to develop a treatment plan, like what we're going to work on, and then, take care of whatever they need for the legal system. Like if they need, say, anger management, we can work on anger management. If they need to have so many, counseling sessions for, substance use. I mean, we do whatever they need for the legal system, and then I can, write letters, reports to let their probation officer or their attorney, know what they're doing and help them, resolve their legal issues. So it's been a really good service, I think, because a lot of people need stuff like that. In most places, they'd have to pay a lot of money out of pocket to do it. And that's what's beautiful, is that they don't have to. They can come in and do those services with us instead of having to go someplace and pay, so much money per appointment. And
it makes a lot of sense. Everything is expensive these days.
Yeah.
But and that's a new thing, right?
Yes.
I think I love the idea, because I think that the fact that when people talk about a treatment center, I think for a lot of them probably they're spooked by the fact that they have to be there overnight. They're thinking, these people are going to try to brainwash me or something. But I think that's probably, I can see that growing, and that thing. I hope it sounds like it's working out pretty well.
Well, we've realized that we need mental health services for our people, and they may start with Jodi, and then when our next cycle comes, they come right into residential.
we've definitely had that happen already.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. Eilleen, can you talk about our pre-assessment and share what you'd like to about that?
Sure. When we get a client, or we don't know for sure if they're going to be a client, but they we do the SASE. I administer the SASE
You
evaluation,
got to tell me what that is.
and the SASE evaluation is subtle alcohol substance. Oh dear.
Well, I didn't mean to put you on the spot. I'm just saying, I never heard someone say, I do the sassy.
Yeah.
I'm like, is that a dance or a...
No, it's a test.
Yeah.
It's a test, and I've done them for 30 years,
All right.
and the test gives me a real good idea as to where they're at as far as their addiction, where they're at as far as their honesty, which when we say most of our alcoholics and addicts, if they're talking, they're not being honest, of course.
Somehow I believe that.
Yeah, and it gives me just a real good idea as to where they probably need to be, which is generally always with us. And then it goes to the staging tool, which Winnie talked about, with where they rate themselves, and we were with them for a little over an hour or better, and it also gives us a real good idea of just visiting with them as to, where we feel they actually might be, because we get some that are really out there. They they talk about things that are not exactly what we would consider okay. And then we have some that are just so wanting to be in treatment that you can't not say, yeah,
Wow,
this
yeah.
person needs to is definitely wanting to get their lives straightened out.
Yeah, you mentioned honesty. I was like, yeah, they say you can't fix the problem if you don't admit there's a problem there.
Yes,
Right?
yes, sir. And then we have we tell them all the details about what they're gonna need, what they need to bring, what they need to not bring, and just give them as much information as we can, so that they can make their own decisions. Also, we have had some that come in and they're a little bit under the weather. They're drunk or they're high.
That was my next question.
Yeah.
I can only imagine.
Right. And those are the folks that we say, you've got some time. Why don't you go to detox?
Yeah.
You need to detox. We can't really take you because we don't know what would happen when you get sober.
We can appreciate
how
the
you
fact
would
that
be.
you're here.
Absolutely,
Right.
absolutely.
You gotta help us
And
out.
so we send them to detox, and we've had some that, Winnie says you're gonna go, and they go. She doesn't give them a choice. She says you're gonna go, and sometimes we have to do that. You just have to say you're gonna do this, because they can't make decisions on their own. They don't know what they want. They don't know, and so we give them lots of ways to make choices.
I'm sure that you all have seen a little bit of everything.
Yeah.
In this your jobs that you have. I'm curious. Are there? Is there? You said there were more males than females, and you explained the reason why you think that is. But I'm curious. Is there? And I think I know the answer, but when it comes to substance abuse, man, they can hit at any age. And is there what am I trying to say? Is there a more common age or like that? I mean, I don't know. Is there that
I
you
would
deal
say
with or
a young age. They start out at a young age, 9, 10.
But I guess what I mean is, like, are you dealing with people who have been doing it since a young age, or is your clientele getting any younger or older?
Both, I
Both.
think.
Real? Okay, you got to
Yeah.
explain that to me.
Well, we've had individuals come in their early 20s.
Wow.
We've had
mean,
individuals in their 70s.
In a way, I got to think. Well, at least they realize it early.
Hmm
But at the same time, I think that's kind of sad that it's got to the point. But and he's 70.
So
You said.
what I've noticed is for the early legal issues usually have a big part in it.
Mm-hmm.
The older individuals we get, they truly are sick and tired of being sick and tired. You know, they've been living this lifestyle for way too long, majority of their life.
Let me ask you this, and I hate to jump in, but
You're fine.
I would assume, as someone who knows nothing about this, I would assume that the older person there may be well, maybe not. Is there a higher we use a big word. Is there a higher recidivism rate for older or younger people?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, which one?
Well, the recidivism would be the older person who has been
just because it's more of a habit,
in and out of treatment over
Okay.
and over and over again, and still are struggling.
And it hasn't really taken.
They're just not ready.
Wow. Yeah, it's got to happen up here and here, right?
That's right.
And they become very treatment savvy, so they know all the lingo. You know, they know what to say.
Yeah.
And
They know what you want to hear.
That's right.
They do.
They know how to get from point A to point B.
That's easily.
I know that I interrupt you. I'm
No,
sorry,
you're
you were
fine.
talking. What do you see between those two ages? What are the tendencies that you guys see?
No, I would definitely agree with that. The recidivism rate happens, at a later age. It's almost like their routine. I mean, it's just kind of taking place. And
to the next treatment plan.
I was just going to, I don't mean to interrupt, but I was just going to say a lot of them are legal problems too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
A lot of them are legal problems. That's the reason why they come to treatment too.
Okay, I can see that.
Yeah.
I mean, I can see that someone who, gets a DUI at 20, 25.
Yeah.
How, because that can be expensive, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Very.
But someone who's, up, in their 60s, 70s, maybe, I mean, they may not even have a car. I mean, I don't, maybe it could be a thing where they don't even have a car license, but like you said, it's become, unfortunately, some sort of a lifestyle for them.
Mm-hmm. Well, and one thing
like a Groundhog Day type thing.
Right. And one thing too is that the legal consequences have changed over time. So in the past, people could get multiple DUIs and not get in that much trouble. Now
it's much harsher.
Two. The second one is a felony.
And you were talking about there's a lot of court orders.
Yes.
Going
on. Right.
Okay.
Well, and even George Hawkins himself was in treatment 25 times before he finally got
25
sober.
Times.
But he died sober.
Mm-hmm.
He did a lot of work from the time he got sober till.
Did you all know him?
My Aunt Mary Whitetail Hawkins was married to his brother, Dolores Hawkins. And it's ironic that I come around, he's my in-law, and I'm in the place that he started.
That's something special.
I need to share a story with you. Back in the early 80s, I was the Indian Child Welfare Director. And I had brought some children home from Dallas and brought them to a grandma and Gary. And there were siblings. And I got to thinking back, and I asked this client, do you know so-and-so from Gary? Yeah, she was my grandma. And I got to calculating things in my head, and I thought, I wonder if he's one of the siblings that I brought back. And I said, you might want to check with your family. And I said, this would have been in the early 80s. There's 3 or 4 of you. And he came back and he said, Winnie, I was one of those siblings. And I said, I took care of you when you were a young boy, and I'm taking care of you as a man. So it came full circle. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And it's those kinds of things, because we really have to be careful when we accept someone, because I could be related to him.
Yeah.
She could be related to him. Kenny, she can't work with her relations, and I may have to step back.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
I may have to step back and not be in the assessment because they're my relation. Yeah. And so it gets kind of tricky there, but we manage. We really do manage when it comes to assigning our clients to our counselors.
If people are listening to this, watching this, whatever, who are interested in let's say if they know someone who might need help, what is the probably what's let's say they know someone in their family. How do they approach it? Yeah, I mean, I'm sure there are a lot of people who say, "Nope, I'm not listening. I'm walking out." How do you even start that conversation with someone?
A lot of the times the family member will call their son, their grandson, whomever in the family needs help. Or we say, can you have them call us? Because we want them to have a buy-in. We need for them to call us. And then they'll come by either pick up application or we tell them to go online. We've already have serviced out-of-state natives in our treatment center. So it starts there, and I really believe it's in the engagement in the beginning to bring them in. And then there's some that we really try to get away from. So I'm just coming to sleep and eat and not do the work.
Yeah.
We evaluate them at the third week.
Oh,
then,
that's what. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then we
I was
determine.
thinking surely there's
Yeah.
some sort of.
Oh, yeah.
And then
eval.
usually they'll either leave or they'll get with it and do the work.
Yeah.
I was really impressed with this last group because I'm a stickler on homework. I'm a stickler at looking at well-brought journals and Jodi's journals, and I want to see that they're doing the work. Well, when we did their final assessment, they completed all of their work. And I was like, that's what we want. We want them to be successful. I would say probably 85% of my staff are in recovery. And if you added up the years, it would be hundreds of years.
Wow.
And
well, let's talk about that. I mean, I know there are a lot of jobs where you have to have someone who's been there, and this is a perfect example. I mean, I would assume that let's talk about counselors of any type, marital counselors or whatever. I would assume that the people, the best counselors, are the ones who've dealt with this before. That's got to be your experience.
Well,
I mean, I'm not making this. I'm not making assumptions, but I mean, you said earlier that you did it doing it for a while and you love doing it. That's where I'm coming from.
No, I'm not in recovery. I am an Al-Anon, and Al-Anon is a person who goes to a support group that has an alcoholic or addict in their life, and it's for women and men, so I've been in Al-Anon for many years, and the folks that are in the room next to us is usually, I mean, that's the AA. They have Al-Anon and AA pretty much in the same place. One goes to Al-Anon, the other one goes to the other door. And you go to the other door, and the room's full, and it's like, wow. You go to Al-Anon, and there may be 8, 9.
But it's those experiences that you have.
The one, yeah, exactly.
That probably helped you in your position.
Exactly.
Your position.
Yeah. And so, as far as counselors go, the ones usually that have a lot of background from, are recovering. They've got the know-how. They can catch them whenever they're full of BS and things like that, which is just about all of them. And the newbies, they struggle. They have a lot of, I do a lot of supervision, and the ones that have the college education, book smart gets you nowhere. I'll never forget the day I walked into my first treatment facility, and I thought, well, now I can do this and this and this, and everything will be fine. They looked at me like I had a hole in my head. You have to be there.
Yeah,
you have to be there.
And Kenny, you mentioned off the top of the show, that's where you're coming from, right?
Yeah, I think it makes a big difference. Somebody
Absolutely.
that's in their own recovery and somebody that's been there, somebody that knows what it's like to, when you first walk into that door. Your emotions are just up and down. Some of them start doubting themselves about what they're doing. But a lot of that I can relate to, when they come into treatment. And, myself, I remember when I first started working there, I started doing my job and, I just kind of thought to myself, I said, well, I don't know if I can make a difference here. But then I thought about it. I said, well, maybe if I share my story and share what I've been through.
It makes a lot of
And I
difference.
found out that really, I connected with it. I started connecting with a lot of them that came into treatment.
Yeah, I was, I related to. I was just talking with some kids at our youth council just the other day. We were talking about TV stuff, and shooting video and stuff, and public service announcements.
Mm-hmm.
And the interesting thing is they had voted on these topics that were important they thought were important to them, and they were about substance abuse, domestic violence, cultural identity, and basically everything that if you don't have balance in those areas, you would end up at a place like George Hawkins.
Yeah.
And I remember I was talking to them. I said, I said, you guys voted on these subjects, so they were obviously important to you. I said, the thing you have to remember is like these are not just specific to the Cheyenne and Arapaho tribes. Unfortunately, every tribe.
Yeah.
I said, but what you don't realize is like every population of people, no matter color, language, race, part of the world, every segment of the population is dealing with substance abuse and domestic violence and things like that. I said it's multiplied in a smaller community because honestly, 10% of 500 is a much bigger number than 10% of 2 million.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, but these are things that everyone is dealing with, but you just see them as larger because it's a bigger proportion.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things I told them, I said, these are serious subjects, so you cannot treat them lightly. You have to connect with people.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what we're talking about here is I can't imagine that any of you would be able to do your jobs in the proper way if you did not connect with people. And that's what you're talking about, man.
Yeah.
I mean, someone can say, I know where you're coming from because I've been there.
Yeah.
And that I can't believe that you thought that you wouldn't be able to make a difference. Because let me just, don't ever think that again. Okay? Let's just make that, don't ever think that again.
He's wonderful.
I mean, yeah, for someone who's, if you can tell someone, I know what you're talking about. I've been there. Man, that's a huge connection.
Yeah. A lot of our people, you see, even myself, just by working there, there's still a lot of things I needed to work on myself. And by working at the treatment center, I thought I knew a lot back then, but, I didn't. I know, as they say, what I didn't know, but now I know. And that's the way I am today.
That's a hard lesson to learn, man. I told people when I was 18, I thought I knew everything. And when I was 21, I sure knew everything.
Yeah.
But now that I'm almost 60, I realize I don't know squat. And as long as I learn a little something every day, I'm good, Like right now, I'm learning stuff, right?
Yeah.
Well, you see, my mother, when I was young too, I was the same way. She would tell me things when I was out when I was in my 20s, I would be carrying on, and she would always tell me things.
That's a good way to say it, carrying on.
Yeah.
Very generic.
But you see, now that, I remember back then she would tell me things, and I wouldn't listen to her. I used to think I knew what I was doing, but, in reality, but she always told me, she said, you got to learn the hard way.
Yeah.
And that's how I
It's
learned.
amazing how smart our parents get the older we get.
Really.
Most of them, it's like, they actually didn't know what they were talking about.
I'm very fortunate that I have the staff that I have. They're committed. They step up when when something needs to be covered. They're there. And I have Cheyenne and Arapaho tribal members working there. I presented my strategic plan yesterday, and I just want to
let's hear a little bit of that.
Go over the accomplishments.
Let's hear it.
Okay. Currently, we have a surveillance we have cameras in our treatment center, so we see what's going on within the treatment center. We can see them when they're trying to sneak things in, and it's on video, and we go back and look at it. We provide alcohol and drug assessments for all natives that have a CDIB. We provide residential, outpatient. People come back if they've already gone through and they want to re-enter. We bring them back. Staff continue to stay updated on their trainings. Cheyenne and Arapaho tribal members make up 75% of my staff.
Wow.
And in the year 2023, we had 77% completion rate for that whole year.
Mm-hmm.
And then in 2024, we had 81% completion rate.
Not bad.
So we took the numbers and tallied them for all 12 90-day sessions, and our overall success rate is 61%. Right now, the national average is about 30%.
Wow, 30.
So
Yeah.
because
Whoa.
it's lower now, the pandemic,
Oh,
people are
yeah, we're
starting
still-
to,
Yeah, we're still
we're still,
trying to pull out of that, you know.
we offer cultural and traditional teachings in our center. We also have parenting, we have finance classes. We have joined and collaborated with local organizations, and they come in and offer group to our clients. So that's been very successful. Eilleen talked about supervising interns. All the interns that we have supervised are native, and most of them are CNA.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I turn around and hire them if they're willing to come to work for us. So some of our challenges have been that we have a hard time finding qualified staff.
Yeah.
I want qualified tribal staff. And some of the challenges are also when they come in, they have co-occurring disorders, clinical depression, substance abuse, anxiety, substance abuse. They're coming in with grief and loss. They're coming in with trauma. So they may have been on medications before. They haven't taken them in a while, so we get them to IHS. We partner with behavioral
What did you
health.
call that? Concurrent?
Co-occurring.
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 Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
In other words,
Yeah, you're right. Like that's just, I mean,
two.
and it very well could be that someone who is depressed,
Mhm.
that's going to turn into substance abuse, and then they're going to,
They're doing it the
and
same
then, yeah,
time.
and then it causes
Yeah.
something else, and
They
and people
self-medicate.
because they're self-medicating to treat the symptoms and not the root cause.
And
Right.
see, the ironic thing about that is, you know, they're feeling depressed and they want to drink to make themselves
Which
feel
is-
better. And
It's
alcohol,
not, that's,
it's a
that's,
depressant.
I mean,
Alcohol is a depressant.
yeah,
So
that's
it might
generally
make
not
you-
going to make it any better.
It might make you feel a little bit better for that moment,
Yeah,
but now you're doubled down on that depression
Yeah.
after you're going through that
it's
withdrawal.
a vicious
hangover,
cycle.
and-
and it really is. Well, man, you know, I there's so much more we could talk for another hour about this. You guys could school me more, but I think you know, we're kind of getting to the point we might want to wrap this up. Let me just ask. Let me start on your end of the table. Just kind of final thoughts on,
Okay.
you know, what people need to know about George Hawkins and what services they provide, and leave them with a nugget of wisdom here.
Okay. In my opinion, George Hawkins is one of the better. I've worked in several facilities, and it's one of the better facilities. Not only is it's beautiful, the remodel is just turned out wonderful. It's very clean. Food is good. There's things that that a lot of people don't get in other facilities, and I just don't know of anything, you know, that I could down it about because
Not that we would want you to.
no, but I would.
Yeah.
But you know, it's just a good place, you know. And we always tell them, you know, there's the door. You can go anytime. They're never locked in, you know. So it's it's just a real good place for to help you not only get spiritually better and emotionally better, but just to get physically better.
And culturally better.
And culturally better.
I'm with Eilleen because having worked other places, at George Hawkins, we get to treat the whole person. There's some things that haven't been mentioned
And if
yet.
you're not doing that, I think you're not doing your job.
Exactly. And so not only do we treat the cultural aspects, we treat the spiritual aspects, the physical health. I don't think anybody's mentioned it yet, but they go for walks every day. And they meditate and they do yoga and, all kinds of stuff. And so watching people, like watching their physical health improve while they're there is really amazing. We've had people come in using walkers and pretty soon they're walking on their own, and they're doing so much better. And the spiritual aspect of it, having worked at state agencies where you cannot even talk about that at all, this has been amazing because we can talk about it. We can talk about the cultural aspects, the spiritual aspects, the whole person. And I don't know that you get that very many places. And we've got a 90-day program. A couple of years ago, I think it was, the state cut a lot of programs back to 30 days, which is not enough time by any means. No. And so when I heard there was a 90-day program, I was like, wow, that's pretty amazing. So it's a great place.
I would like to say, a lot of our people, we suffer from, like Angie mentioned earlier, this intergenerational trauma. It goes way back in the late 1800s when they were taking kids away from their parents and all the abuse they suffered, sexual abuse, physical abuse, verbal abuse, all those abuses where they're handed down in our families. When those kids got older, they started doing the same things to their own kids. So a lot of that abuse, that's where it came from, even up to this day. And a lot of us, even though it might have not happened like now, but it's still in our blood. We still carry that.
People, I mean, I don't want to get on the soapbox, but I'm like, if you've got some kids that were never taught to be parents, and those have kids that they were taught to be parents, and then you broke the circle, and then you wonder why things are messed up. Because you broke the circle.
Well, a lot of our people, we come from dysfunctional families. And, I know myself, I came from, my father was an alcoholic, and I partly grew up in a boarding school. But there was a lot of things that, as a young man, not having your father there, not telling you what it is to be expected of a man, to be a man when you grow up. And a lot of our people don't have that. These kids that, like I said, come from dysfunctional families. And a lot of that goes back, like I said, even my own self. The reason why I'm saying this is because that's the way it was with me. I went to boarding schools, but you know what? One thing I found out over the years with my sobriety is that, my mother, she went to this school here at Concho. She went here from 1935 to 1947. And, my mother, she never showed no affection to us when we were growing up. I used to think that she didn't care about us. She never said, I love you. She never gave us hugs. But,
it sounds like she never got.
Yeah, come to find out, see, she was like 7 years old when she came to this boarding school. And she stayed here until she was 18. So she never had that affection. Yeah. And it came down to us, too. And that's why she
was never taught to be a proper mother.
Yeah. So a lot of that in our people, I know myself, just like I said, I found that out over the years with my sobriety, why things were the way they were. But we all still carry that intergenerational trauma. So we try to let them know the pain that they carry. And I'm the coordinator of the sweats over there. And a lot of the sweats that we do over there, and that's to help them with their healing that they need to do. But, the well-brighty, it's really a good thing, with our people to try to, connect them back with their culture. But I'm very fortunate, and I'm really grateful to be doing what I'm doing, because we're losing too many of our people, these younger ones, try to show them a better way to live, give them, set a better example to them. But, yeah.
Where did you go next? And we'll give Winnie the last word.
Okay. Yeah, no, I definitely agree with Kenny. This well variety training has really opened my eyes. It gives us a better understanding, um, you know, through the court systems or whatever it may have been. You know, when you get in trouble, you have to go to so many AA meetings and you might not understand it. So the well variety puts everything in the light the way you understand it. It talks about um, everything, I don't mean to double back on what he says, but everything coming in full circle and about the medicine wheel, and you learn what the 4 colors mean. It's all races of the people, the Asians, the blacks, the whites, and the Native Americans. So once you find out who you are, where you come from, where your family's about, you have a better understanding of who you are. And that is something you learn at George Hawkins. And nobody said it yet, but we are accepting applications.
Oh, yes.
Well, we got to say that we're not, this podcast will be aired for a while. So,
okay.
Well,
then I don't want that put out.
Well, definitely. I mean, just contact the folks.
Yeah, definitely.
We don't want to say do it today or next week, but if you need help, you should definitely contact them.
Yeah, no, definitely contact us. If we are in mid-cycle, that's when they're able to meet up with Jodi, and that way they're getting something to hold them over until we are taking clients. So, definitely on that.
Winnie, you get the last word. Take us home.
I have a story that I want to share. Part of my theory and part of my approach, as many years as Eilleen's, I've been doing it probably almost 40 years now. I worked with a lot of Southwest tribes and ran a lot of different programs there, but I believe that every Native has a cultural self-esteem, and that cultural self-esteem is inherent to you, and if you don't know it, you can learn it. And I was watching 60 Minutes one evening, and there was a black psychologist on there, and he talked about the black cultural self-esteem. And I went, oh my God, that's what I believe in. I really go from that approach because we want them to be proud of who they are so they don't have to resort to alcohol and drugs. And I was just amazed, something that I've believed in for so many years and practiced. There he was on television talking about the very same thing. One message I could give to young people is that in the early 1992, 93, I read some research, and the question that was posed is, what has to be present to create an addictive person? And there's 3 things that I always tell young people. They're very simple. One is that has to be shown to you. Someone has to introduce to you that substance and how to use it, drinking, whatever. Number 2, it's acceptable behavior in your family. You see it, you join right in. The third one is acceptable within the community, and I say within the tribe. And then I come back and ask them, well, what 3 things need to happen in order to change that? And I ask them, well, you take the substance away. You don't go around it. And that may make you choose not to go to some family birthdays or celebrations. You just don't expose yourself to it. And the third thing is, on a bigger scale, is that we have to make it unacceptable among our people. And, that's why we do the work that we do, is to help our people heal. And if I could just say that to young people, that's a start. If you can make those decisions. But I'm pleased to be the director at George Hawkins. I myself will have 34 years sobriety, October 1. And I've raised my children with some effects of alcohol, but yet I always say to them, I want you to do better than me. I want you to go further than me. And my staff has heard me talk about my daughter, Dr. Irene Martin. She has a doctorate in nurse practice. So she's doing a lot of the work that we're doing. First responders, policemen, all the people.
I posted a few years ago, some years ago, when my son graduated from high school, I posted a picture, said something like, "Hey, he's better than his old man in every way." I said, "This is what I prayed for all these years." And my friend says, "Hey, man, they're all better than us." That's a good thing, right? So on that note, I want to say thank you all for being here. Ha-ho! To my friends from the George Hawkins Memorial Treatment Center in Clinton, Oklahoma. And I'm Darren Brown here. Thank you for joining us here.
Thank you for
And
having
so
us.
we will see you next time on our Cheyenne and Arapaho Productions podcast. We'll see you then.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.